That's gonna hurt. Hey, welcome back to the Music Snob, where I know music, unless it sucks. Well, there's probably some good music I've never heard of. Who knows? It's relative. If you've been here before, I just like to say, welcome back, pal. If you've never been here before, you have no idea what's going on in this mess. If you're new, I apologize. I apologize before you watch. But what did you pay? Do you pay for this? Better not. I wouldn't pay for this. If you like, put one of those. And if you really like, then subscribe. And I hope to see you again. And, check out my other crappy Music Snob stuff. But, what I really want to know is, do you like Bryan Adams? Of course you do. Like, why would you have clicked on this just to see this? Over here is probably a picture of, Bryan Adams is awesome. And then you went, what's this jerk think about Bryan Adams? And that's why you're here. Well, I don't know. Have you heard Summer '69 before? Have you heard it enough? Have you heard Everything I Do It For You enough yet? Has it gotten to that point in your life? Maybe not. Did you know that besides having a schload of hits and great albums, and he also does other songs. He's written a bunch of songs for other artists, either as a co-writer with the artist or with the guy he collaborated with most was Jim Valens. Sometimes Mutt Lang. It's my favorite picture of Mutt. If you didn't know that Bryan Adams wrote a ton of other songs for other people, then maybe you should be watching this so you can educate yourself on Bryan Adams' songwriting abilities, as well as I'll talk about some of his most of his hits, but I want to talk about the songs he's written with or for other people. That's what I want to talk about most in this edition of
The Music Snob.
So if you did not know about the fact that Bryan Adams has written probably hundreds of songs for other people, if you did not know that, you get yourself, it's Canadian. We're good Canadian people here. So get yourself a moose, get yourself a beaver, maybe get a jackalope. I don't give a crap. Saddle up that son of a bitch. And we're going to go on a musical journey. And we're going to talk about Bryan Adams. Not only this is going to be like two parts. We're going to talk about Bryan Adams' music, and we're going to talk about his songs that he wrote for other people or with other people. So I just want to make one thing clear. This is Bryan Adams. This is not Bryan Adams. I don't know how people somehow confused these two for quite a while. And I know this guy here, he for quite a while, he got really irked when people asked him to play Summer '69 on stage. It's funny, but he didn't enjoy that as much as I do. So anyways, Bryan Adams. The guy sold 75 million. Well, it's between 75 and 100 million albums. Somehow we couldn't narrow that down between 25 million. If you're one of the 25 million people, let me know so I can keep track. 75 to 100 million albums. He's the first Canadian to do diamond status, so sell 1 million copies in Canada. Which he's Everything I Do For You is sold 15 million copies worldwide. Waking Up the Neighbors, which was his fifth album, sold 16 million copies. Bryan Guy Adams, born 1959 in Kingston, Ontario. His parents were British. His father was an officer in the British Army, and he eventually joined the Canadian Army, and then he was a peacekeeper. He joined, he moved to Canada, and he was stationed in various Canadian cities. At some point, they were located in Ottawa, and that's where Bryan was raised. Although his when he bought his first real six string, his first guitar was purchased in Reading, England, and it was a Strat clone. His first real six string, apparently, according to him, it was an upgrade. And he got a Les Paul but it was Les Paul copy. But he did buy it at a Five and Dime. So sometimes the writing is autobiographical. So his first real, what he considered his first real six string, was from the Five and Dime in Ottawa in 1971. In 74, his mom, what was his brother? They moved to North Vancouver, while his father was posted abroad. While going to secondary school, he left school to play in a group called Shock. He spent his parents had spent some had saved up some money for his college education. He took that and he bought himself a grand piano. Well, yeah, I would do that if I had enough money. Later, he was selling pet food and he was a dishwasher just so he could pay his own rent. He became a part of the Vancouver music scene. And if you've ever watched any of the other videos, I talk about the Vancouver music scene. Bob Rock, Loverboy, they're great Canadian boys from the Vancouver area. Little Mountain Sound, all this stuff. He became part of that whole uprising, we'll say, of music in Vancouver. Somehow, at the age of 15, he joined Sweeney Todd. He took over for Nick Gilder. Remember Nick Gilder? First of all, Sweeney Todd, Roxy Roller, ooh, Roxy. Yeah, every bar you had to play that thing every night 17 times. Nick Gilder was the original lead singer of Sweeney Todd. Of course, you got to know Hot Child in the City. He's also wrote tons of things for other people. Warrior. Remember the Warrior Scandal? He co-wrote that. Anyway, Sweeney Todd. They were a big Canadian band for a while. They had Roxy Roller, and for whatever reason, Nick Gilder left after the first album, so they got Bryan Adams when he was 15, and they re-recorded Roxy Roller and re-released it again. After they recorded their second album, If Wishes Were Horses, Bryan quit. He was 16 years old. At 18, in 1978, he met Jim Vallance at a Long and McQuaid. I don't know which one. It's a great Canadian music store. Jim Vallance was the former drummer and principal songwriter for Prism, which was another great Canadian band. Armageddon, carry me home. I can't do a falsetto. I'm not singing that well at all in the first place. That was Prism, and Jim Vallance was the drummer, and he quit. He met Bryan Adams in a record store, and they met a few days later in Jim's studio. And they just started writing songs together, and became one of the greatest writing duos that ever existed. Also, 1978, Bryan Adams, he signed a record deal with A&M, Herb Alpert's label, for $1. Now, I don't know how that works. I would sign a deal for $1 just to have a deal. I do think pretty much anything for $1 these days, you know what I'm saying? They released one of his demos that he had already done. Or they remixed it. It was called Let Me Take You Dancing. And if you've ever heard of it, it does sound like the Chipmunks are singing it. Let me take you dancing. It's, yeah. Yeah, remember, if you've been here before, I used to play the songs. I used to play parts of the songs. But I don't anymore. And the reason is because I've somehow become monetized on here. And enough people have subscribed. And I'm sorry. That now I make a little bit of money. I think I made $15 this month. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. But if I play other people's music, I don't make anything off of it at all. So what's the point? So I'm just gonna probably occasionally sing the song. Let me take you dance. It's I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh man. Somehow. After the success of Let Me Take You Dancing, he somehow convinced Bruce Allen. Now, I've talked about Bruce Allen, one of the greatest managers. I know they're no longer together, but one of the greatest managers that ever existed. He convinced him to be his manager, and it worked out pretty good for both of them, I would say. So let's talk about Bryan Adams' music. Later on, I wanted to talk about his writing for other people. And the reason is because, I don't know if you heard recently, he re-recorded and released his versions of 2 Kiss songs that he wrote with members of Kiss 40 odd years ago. So it's kind of relevant right now to talk about, did you know all of these other songs that Bryan Adams has had his finger in? Or is that how you want to say that? He's been part of. He's had his his foot on? Nah, who cares? 1980, though. Let's talk about his recording for a while. Let's talk about the heyday of Bryan Adams recording. 1980, he released his first album, and it was called Bryan Adams, which, great title. 2 songs were written only by Bryan, so he had been writing by himself at some point. The rest were co-written with Jim Vallance. There's also a co-write with Paul Dean of Loverboy, that guitar player. Remember the Blair's Record Collection?
Blair's
They talk about hardcore,
Collection.
which is a Paul Dean album, and it's got co-write with Bryan Adams as well. I love Paul Dean. He also there's a guy named Eric Cagna. Oh God, I hope I pronounced that right. Eric Cagna. Now, a good Vancouver boy. Now, all I could find out about Eric Cagna is he's from Vancouver, and he co-wrote a couple songs with Bryan Adams. Straight from the Heart was one of them. He unfortunately had passed long before I even knew he existed. Around 2001. Yeah, he was only 53. So Eric Cagna, I'm glad that you met Bryan Adams at some point and you got some residuals out of a couple of the songs. Eric Cagna, you are remembered slightly, unfortunately not as much as you should be, because I had to do a lot of digging just to find out about that, which is fine. You want to be private, people want to be private. I'm sorry to hear that he had passed before I even had a chance to do this video. Anyways, 3 singles. Sorry, there were not 4 singles. There were 3 singles. Hiding from Love, which was a co-write with Eric Cagna. Give Me Your Love, which was another great tune. Oh, give me your love. If I had a falsetto, it would be way better. Remember, do you remember the night we stayed together? Now, yeah, I know you'd probably rather hear him doing it. So go to his YouTube page and watch those, because he never plays those live. Fred Turner of BTO played bass on this album. Jim Clench of April Wine, who I've talked about, he was the guy in Loverboy when they opened for Kiss on their very first gig, and then he left and he went to April Wine. Jim Clench played bass on this album as well. Jeff Baxter played guitar on this album. If you don't know who Jeff Baxter was, he played with Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers. So this album had, like a pedigree before I knew what the word pedigree was, but somehow it did not sell a lot. But got his foot in the door. It got his name and his voice out there, and he started co-writing with other people and stuff. But 1981. Let's talk about 1981. You want it, you got it. Now this was the second album. It only sold 50,000. But let's talk about this album. Several songs were written by Bryan Adams only. 6 with Jim Vallance. 1 with Lindsay Mitchell of Prism. This album was where people kind of getting the idea of what a great songwriter he was. Lonely Nights. Can't seem to take another lonely night. That song. Lonely Nights had previously been recorded by Ian Lloyd, and later on it was covered by Uriah Heep. Prism did Jealousy, which was another great song on there. Jealousy taking over me. Yeah, you can tell I'm toned down. Randy Meisner covered Tonight, which is another great song. So singles, Lonely Nights, I'm Coming Home, and Fits You Good, which Fits You Good, if you don't know it, it was redone on the Unplugged album, and it was so cool. Co-produced by Bob Clearmountain. Now, have I talked about Bob? I think I have talked about Bob before. Bob Clearmountain, mixer, producer. He's worked with Hall & Oates on Big Bam Boom. He also worked on Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen. So this guy, one of the best producers. And some of this album, like I said, only sold 50,000 copies. And yet, this is probably about the time Kiss, I'm going to talk about it later, but this is about the time Kiss called him and he started writing with those guys. 1983, Cuts Like a Knife. Had Straight from the Heart, which was co-write with Eric Cagna. Cuts Like a Knife, This Time, and The Best Was Yet to Come. Number 8 on Billboard. This one, it was released in the States, so that's where people in America were starting to know who he was. And number 8 on Billboard. Cuts Like a Knife was played a lot on MTV. All songs co-written with Jim Vallance, except Straight from the Heart, which was co-written with Eric Cagna. Don't Leave Me Lonely was co-written with Eric Carr of Kiss. Remember I said he had co-wrote those 2 songs with Kiss, and they were actually going to do another song he wrote with Eric Carr on the Creature of the Night album, but they did not do it. So he did it himself, Don't Leave Me Lonely, which I can only imagine how Kiss would have done that. Co-produced this album, co-produced by, again, Bob Clearmountain. Now, here's your other special, say, guest. Mike Fraser, and I talked about him before. He was part of the Dream Team of Loverboy, and he worked a lot with Bob Rock. He is assistant engineer. Lou Gramm recently inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Foreigner, and I've talked about Foreigner before. Why they got into the Hall of Fame. Lou Gramm did some backing vocals. This album, Cuts Like a Knife, sold 1 million copies in the USA. Straight from the Heart was covered by Bonnie Tyler later. The Best Was Yet to Come was covered by Laura Branigan. Remember her? Let's talk about those two. Bonnie Tyler, Total Eclipse of the Heart. That's who Bonnie Tyler was, had that great raspy voice. Laura Branigan, who you got to remember Laura Branigan. She had a great hit with Gloria. I'm not doing that. She covered that one as well. So 1984 rolled around. Do you know where I am now? Reckless, baby. Reckless. Reckless was released on Bryan Adams' 25th birthday. This thing sold 12 million copies. It's probably still selling. I know I bought it on cassette. I bought it on CD. I got the 25th anniversary version. It had all those other great covers. Or he had some demos on the thing, some live stuff. But anyways, first Canadian album to go diamond in Canada, which I already mentioned, which is 1 million copies just in Canada. A lot of people have done it since, but he was the first. 6 singles. Run to You, which I think, if you watch that, I did a easy lick.
Easy licks.
About Bryan Adams. I bastardized. I show a way to play Run to You. I also put Somebody, which was a single. Heaven. I didn't do that one. Summer 69. You know Summer 69. Everybody knows Summer 69. You make your own jokes. I don't care. One Night Love Affair. And It's Only Love with Tina Turner. God, that was a great tune. Heaven was previously released just before. It was in a film called A Night in Heaven with Leslie Ann Warren. Let's say, you know what? I used to love Leslie Ann Warren. Okay, I'm male. It was the 80s. She's a very good looking woman. I'm sorry. The album was recorded at Little Mountain, which I've talked about. I already talked about it in this video already. Little Mountain Sound, one of the best recording studios that ever exist. Look it up. Look up the documentary about this place. This is where AC/DC recorded the best albums. And Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, all did the best albums that they ever did in Little Mountain Sound. Of course, produced by Bob Clearmountain. Mike Fraser worked on it. Lou Gramm again did more backing vocals. All songs co-written with Jim Vallance. What a juggernaut of an album. And yet, it continues. 1987, Into the Fire. Now, this one did not do as well. So people will go, it was a bomb of an album. No, what do you expect? The guy did 12 million copies. This one only sold, 2? Okay, boo frickin' who. It still did better than You Want It, You Got It. Still did better than the first album. Still better than Cuts Like a Knife. 6 singles. Heat of the Night. And again, this stuff was getting played constantly on MTV. You wouldn't have known that this was not selling as well. You wouldn't have known, because every 5 minutes there was one of these songs on MTV. If you just sat there watching MTV all day like I did. Had nothing else to do. Heat of the Night. Hearts on Fire. Victim of Love. Only the Strong Survive. Into the Fire. And Another Day. These are singles. Co-produced by Bob Clearmountain. All songs co-written with Jim Vallance. 2 million copies considered unsuccessful. Since it wasn't as successful, this is kind of where he stopped writing with Jim. Let's pretend it's the same thing as when Metallica stopped calling Bob Rock. You have a certain amount of success, and then you have a little bit less, and you got to find a way to kick it up again. So him and Jim, they stopped writing together in 1989. They still had a few songs left over on his next album. But this is where he started calling Mutt Lange, and who had already got the sound out there for. I've talked about him and Huey Lewis. He worked with Huey Lewis before Huey Lewis was big and wrote them a big song. And just every huge thing, besides, putting his stamp on Shania Twain. He had already put a stamp on Def Leppard and, God, I can't even think of how many other ones. So he started working with Bryan Adams, and make your jokes that his stuff and Def Leppard were similar. I don't care. I still love them. So they could all get on stage together and play amalgamations of all their hits. I don't care. You can bring Shania Twain out. I don't care. Play it all. Have a tribute to Mutt Lange, because he... I should talk... Well, I would talk about him if I could find more than one picture. Well, that's the only picture I can find. 1991, Waking Up the Neighbors. Thank you, Mutt Lange, because after the dismal, unsuccessful 2 million selling album of Into the Fire, Waking Up the Neighbors, #1 in 8 countries, 6 singles. Everything I Do for You, everything I do it for you. Can't Stop, This Thing We Started. There Will Never Be Another Tonight. Thought I died and gone to heaven. All I Want Is You. Do I have to say the words? And of course, Everything I Do It for You. It was actually a little bit earlier because it was on the soundtrack to Robin Hood. That's where Kevin Costner, Kevin Costner, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. If you haven't watched it recently, watch it again. And you tell me, at what point does he stop doing the English accent? When did he just say, it ain't working? Just go back to doing your... What is he, from Alabama? I don't know where he's from. Everything I do it for you. #1, 7 weeks in a row. All 15 songs co-written with Mutt Lange, but there was 3 demos that they had already done with. He had written with Jim Valance, but then Mutt put his stamp on it. One co-write with Keith Scott, who's Bryan Adams' guitar player, and somebody named Victoria Russell. Now I don't know anything about Victoria Russell. If I can find a picture, I'll put it up here. Besides the Mutt Lange one, 4 co-writes with Jim Valance. Everything I Do was actually Everything I Do It for You was actually based on a piece like let's say the love theme to Robin Hood that was written by Michael Kamen, who you should know Michael Kamen because he scored. He's unfortunately passed as well. He scored tons of films like Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, Roadhouse. But he had written this piece of music, and then Bryan and Mutt, I guess, came up with the actual lyrics to sing over Everything I Do It for You. And they ended up writing the other later as well. 1993. So Far, So Good. What a great album to cover. One new single on this thing. Otherwise, it was just, it's greatest hits album. Please Forgive Me, which is co-written with Mutt Lange. He had already written So Far So Good, which it was on a later greatest hits, I think. Like when he did Reckless, he had written a song called Reckless, and somehow it did not fit. And later, Loverboy did it, and they changed it to Dangerous, but it was a Bryan Adams song. But this thing was called So Far So Good. He had a song written called So Far So Good, but for whatever reason, it wasn't included on this one, but it was on a later Greatest Hits compilation. 13 million copies. 1996, 18 Till I Die. He was probably in his mid-50s at that point. I don't know. It's a good metaphor, much like Summer of '69, I guess. Maybe 18 means something else. I don't know. 18 Till I Die. 5 million copies. Oh, it wasn't very successful. 7 singles. Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman, which was from Johnny... What was the movie? It was a Johnny Depp movie. Don Juan DeMarco. Now, I believe he won an Oscar for this. He was at least nominated for an Oscar for that song. Only Thing That Looks Good on Me Is You. Let's Make a Night to Remember. Star. 18 Till I Die. Do To You. Like, the only thing that looks good on me is you is dirty enough, and then do to you. I'll always read right there. There's another one. There's a second version of this album released with a duet with Barbra Streisand. I finally found someone, which actually it's pretty good. All songs co-written with Mutt Lange. 3 songs written with Michael Kamen. One with Gretchen Peters. Now you should know Gretchen Peters. She's a writer. She's done a lot of country. She wrote Independence Day for Martina McBride. You Don't Even Know Who I Am for Patty Loveless. Then she started writing some stuff with Bryan Adams. And there's a song called Hey Elvis, which was I believe was on the single to The Only Thing That Looks Good on Me Is You. But I know that Billy Ray Cyrus at some point covered that, even though I know that's not in my notes later. Anyways, co-writes with tons of people. What a great album. It's a pretty good album. I think it's pretty good. 1997. This was so cool. Unplugged. Recorded live in one night, 1997, September, and released in December, with Irish piper Davy Spillane and Michael Kamen, who I guess him and Bryan became chummy. He orchestrated a lot of the stuff on this thing, and he brought kids from Juilliard to the show, and they played the songs, the orchestrations with Bryan. There's 3 new songs: "Back to You," "When You Love Someone," and "A Little Love." And oh yeah, there's great reworkings of "I'm Ready" and "Fits You Good," and with that, Davy Spillane playing that piper thing. Like it sounds like a Zamfir thing. Like I don't know what he's playing, but it sounds so cool. 2.5 million copies. There's also a couple of co-writes with a guy named Elliot Kennedy. Now, I don't know much about that guy, except he's English and a record producer, and has written for Celine Dion, Billy Piper, Spice Girls, Aretha Franklin. So another pedigree of co-writes on this album as well. 1998, On a Day Like Today. I love this album, and I love the cover. On a day like today, you might be just walking down the street with your guitar and there's an elephant hanging out. It could happen. You don't know. 4 singles. On a Day Like Today, When You're Gone, a duet with Mel C. Which one of the Spice Girls is Mel C? Is that Old Spice or is that Pumpkin Spice? I really don't remember anymore. Later on, when he did the other Greatest Hits album, he reworked it with Pam Anderson doing that part, and you really can't tell the difference, which is weird. So either Pam Anderson has a beautiful singing voice, or Mel C is as generic as Pam Anderson could be. I don't know. I don't mean that to be a dick, because I love Pam Anderson. And I don't mean that in a rude way. I nothing but respect. Cloud Number 9, which had to be reworked, but it was still great. Inside Out, which I believe Trisha Yearwood covered later. Co-produced by Bob Rock. Now, I just talked about Bob Rock. I just did a thing about Bob Rock. And this, Bob Rock, everything he touches, except maybe Saint Anger, is gold. And not only gold, it's diamond. It's platinum. It's 20 times platinum. Bob Rock is a god. And this was probably the best, or the last good Bryan Adams album. That's my favorite. One of my favorite albums. Co-writing with a bunch of people. Sold a couple million, but here's what happened. Here's the record company Weasels. They sold his contract to Interscope. You know what Interscope is? Don't they play? Well, it's a rap label, so they didn't give a crap about Bryan Adams. So they didn't do any promotion. The album existed, but unless the radio was playing it, you didn't know it was there. So I know he's done a bunch of albums since then, but this was more or less the end of his actual recording career. Now, with record company, he's got his own record label now. He's put out a number of albums since then, but nothing to the extent of what that last album was or anything of his heyday. So now I just want to shift gears. We're going to talk about his either co-writing with other people or other people doing just covers of his songs, or even he just wrote straight for that person. And that's what we're going to talk about now. So here are some notable, I'm skipping a ton because there's probably a couple of hundred, let's say people that won like Swedish Idol or Zimbabwe Idol. I don't know. There's people covered it and they released albums with covers of his songs. But if it's not somebody I know, there's not really much point in talking about it, because if I don't know, are you going to know? I don't know. We don't know. Plus, the research of why would I want to do all that research? Notable bands who have recorded Bryan Adams songs: April Wine. Just Between You and Me. That band, April Wine. If you don't know them, you must be Canadian, because one of the best great Canadian bands there was ever existed. This could be the right one. Oh God. But anyways, they did Open Soul Surgery that Bryan Adams wrote for them, or co-wrote. Lisa Del Bello. Oh man, I love Lisa Del Bello in the 80s. Oh, look at this. On one of her albums, he co-wrote 3 songs: Never Get to Heaven, You Could Be Good for Me, and She Wants to Know. Joe Cocker. Oh, Joe Cocker. I wish I could do an impression of Joe Cocker right now. But you know what? I'll put up a video. Let's just take a second to remember how awesome John Belushi was. That's all you get. Joe Cocker, Edge of a Dream, which is on the Teacher's soundtrack. Feels Like Forever, which I believe was on a Night Calls album. And When the Night Comes, what was on an album called One Night of Sin. Did you want to do One Night of Sin with Joe Cocker? That could have been a lot of nights, actually, honestly. Roger Daltrey. Remember Roger Daltrey? I do. He was the vocalist for The Who's. Well, still is. He had an album where he got a couple Bryan Adams songs in there. Let Me Down Easy. The album was Under Raging Moon. Let Me Down Easy was the one big single. It was great. Such a great song. And then he also did a song called Rebel, which I have heard Bryan Adams doing it as well on the Into the Fire album. Paul Dean, of course, talked about Paul Dean 50 times. Draw the Line, which was on Hardcore, which also at some point Ted Nugent covered that. Neil Diamond. Yeah! Sorry, that wasn't Regis Philbin. That was my Neil Diamond impression. Yeah! Sorry. I'm okay. Neil Diamond. It Should Have Been Me. This is on Headed for the Future album. Celine Dion did a Bryan Adams song. Let's Talk About Love. Really? Let's Talk About Love was a co-write of Bryan Adams. The Payolas. I just talked about Bob Rock. Remember Bob Rock's first band was called Payolas, and Bryan Adams co-wrote It Won't Be You on the Here's the World For You album. I'd already talked about this. Kiss, War Machine, Rock and Roll Hell. Now, this was Creature of the Night. Bryan Adams did not know that for 50 years, or say 35 years, that those were still huge songs, and Kiss still played those live. He also did Down on Your Knees, which was on Kiss Killers. But then he also, co-wrote that one song with Eric Carr. Crocus, Boys Night Out, from the Blitz. Now, I have heard Bryan Adams doing a demo of that song, and it's on the 25th anniversary version of Reckless. Bryan Adams is doing that song, Boys Night Out. Lone Star. Remember he wrote with Gretchen Peters. Now, I'm not saying he didn't write the song with Gretchen Peters, but country music for quite a while there to me, and I was a country singer. I was so good at it. That's why I'm here. Rock and roll and country were so close for quite a while there. You walked in. Lone Star did it, and it sounded like a country song. It was a great song. It was a hit. And, oh my God, that was on their Crazy Nights album. Loverboy. I already talked about that. Dangerous, which was Reckless. And he just changed it. Hometown Hero, which is on the last good Loverboy album. And also Jump, which, if you watch the Loverboy video I did, I played little snippets back then. That's before I was monetized. Motley Crue. A song called Glitter on Generation Swine. He co-wrote that. Here's a good one. Anne Murray. Stop or take me with you when you go. Anne frickin' Murray. What Would It Take? Bryan Adams. Juice Newton. You gotta know Juice Newton. Can't Wait All Night. Now, I have talked about this before. Tears Are Not Enough. Now, if you remember the whole thing in the 80s, the famine relief, Do They Know It's Christmas by Band-Aid from England. Then in America, they had USA for Africa, doing We Are the World, USA for Africa. Then, of course, on that album, if you ever had that album, which I don't think you can find anymore, there's a Canadian version with every great Canadian singer ever existed. Tears Are Not Enough, written by Bryan Adams, Jim Vallance probably. I'm sure David Foster had a foot on that. I know Bob Rock had something to do with it. Man, so many great songs. Prism, I already talked about Prism because Jim Vallance had been the drummer in Prism. And if you don't remember Prism, not only did they do, was it Armageddon, take me home? That's that song, that was them. But they covered a lot of Bryan Adams songs. Cover Girl, Don't Count Me Out, Don't Let Him Know, Good to Be Back, Stay, Take It or Leave It, You Walked Away Again. I could be wrong on some of those. Bonnie Raitt. I know she did, what was it, Rock Steady with Bryan Adams. It was a duet. But also she did No Way to Treat a Lady, which was co-write. And then Bonnie Tyler also covered that. And I believe she also, Bonnie Tyler, remember Bonnie Tyler, also did Straight from the Heart. The Rovers. Do you know who the Rovers are? Do you remember? Oh yeah, there was it was a Canadian band. But they're an Irish, Celtic-y thing. Irish Rovers. But they were Canadian. They had a show on Sunday night. If you're Canadian, you know what this is. You had the Beachcombers, and then the Irish Rovers would come on and they'd sing great tunes for forever. At some point, they changed their name just to the Rovers. And they had that great song, Wasn't That a Party? Wasn't That a Party? The Rovers covered a Bryan Adams song, All Sing Together. Rod Stewart, Another Heartache. 38 Special. Again, from, if you remember the Joe Cocker, the Teacher soundtrack, they had a song called 38 Special, had a song called Teacher Teacher, which was on the Teacher's soundtrack. But then later, when the Nerds got back together, Revenge of the Nerds Part 2, Nerds of Paradise, they did Back to Paradise, which is a Bryan Adams found song. Tina Turner, after doing the duet with Bryan Adams of It's Only Love, did Back Where You Started, which is a great tune, and Why Must We Wait Until Tonight? Now, is that enough? Here's just a couple of covers that other people done. BTO covered Wasting Time. Laura Branigan, I think I already said this, Best Was Yet to Come. Patti Smythe, The Scandal, covered Win Some, Lose Some. There's a band called Rage, did kind of a weird dance version of Run to You. A band, DJ Sunny and, I don't know, did a weird cover of Heaven. But here's the best part. Everything I do it for you. Roger Whittaker. And Everything I do it for you was also covered by Engelbert Humperdinck. Now, I always wondered, the Grateful Dead, they had their little guys, the Dead hits. Now, did Engelbert Humperdinck have people follow him around from town to town that you could call dinkheads? Did he? That's what I was wondering. Anyway, that's just some of it. Bryan Adams, you, sir, if you ever watch this, and I know you won't, you're a god. Bryan Adams, writer of some of the best rock and roll you've ever heard, and, well, other things, country. What is Celine Dion? Easy Listening. Some of the best songs. Everything I do it for you is what? Just incredible song. Run to You, Cuts Like a Knife. Like, the guy could play hit after hit after hit after hit every night, and then everybody else on the planet could cover his stuff. Oh my God. I don't even know where to stop. I don't know where to start. Bryan Adams, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Bryan Adams is a god. A good Canadian boy. I know he's been living in England for about the last 30 years, but I don't care. He's one of my musical heroes. Obviously I didn't live up to it, but I love Bryan Adams as a singer, as a writer, a producer, whatever. Just a force to be reckoned with, as the kids say. So if I had a hat on, which I don't, my hat would be off again to you, Bryan Adams. Anyways, you made it to this point. I hope it wasn't too long. I appreciate you watching. Thanks for watching. Please like. If you like it, like it. If you really like it, if you like it as much as Sally Field thought people liked her when she won an Oscar, please subscribe. And make a comment if you'd like. Just don't be a dick. And appreciate music for what it is. If you have something you think is awesome that I don't even know about, you let me know. Leave me a comment and tell me about it. Otherwise, please share if you feel the need. And I'll see you again on the music
The
snob.
music
so thank you for watching.
snob.
And please come back.